Hello everyone and welcome to the opening panel of RSK's COP27 event, Renewables in Africa. I'm Margaret Muchler, the partner of Muchler Consulting Services, and I'll be chairing today's session. I'm also supporting CWP as Vice President Development in the Green Hydrogen Projects in Africa, and has the privilege to chair the Namibia Green Hydrogen Association, a private sector platform to engage with the government of Namibia in Namibia. We are here today to discuss renewables in Africa. 50% of African nations are using renewables as their main energy source, meaning that they're further ahead than many European countries. Meanwhile, the continent's global contribution to greenhouse gas emissions is around 3.8%, the lowest in all of the world's regions. How is Africa stepping up to the helm when it comes to renewables? And what does this action account for on a global stage? Before we start, a note on social media and housekeeping. We'd love you to share the event. Please tag @RSK Group and use the hashtag #ActOnESG. Find us on Instagram at the RSK Group. Follow us on LinkedIn, RSK Group. Like us on Facebook, RSK Group, and comment on Twitter @RSK Group. All attendees' microphones are automatically muted throughout the webinar. During the first few slides and introductions, you can pose questions and there will be a Q&A session. You can of course raise questions during the discussion, but please bear in mind as many questions as possible will be answered. Apologies in advance if we don't make it to your question. We will try and get through as many as we can. Shortly after the webinar, you will receive a link to the short survey. If you could take a few minutes to provide feedback, please, so we can improve our future webinars. I'm joined today by 4 experts who will share their thoughts on renewables in Africa and how the continent is sizing the opportunity they present. Can I ask the 4 experts to unmute their cameras or activate their webcams? Fantastic. Edward?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go, thank you.
Yeah.
So first up, we have Edward Ishengoma, Commissioner for Electricity and Renewable Energy, Tanzania. Edward, you quickly want to do a quick introduction of yourself.
Thank you very much, Margaret. My name is Edward Ishengoma. I'm the Commissioner for for Electricity and Renewable Energy at the Ministry of Energy in Tanzania. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Edward. Next, we have Lucy Thomas, Chief Scientist at RSK Group.
Thanks, Margaret. It's lovely to be here with everybody today. I run RSK's Centre for Sustainability Excellence and also our businesses in Africa, where we have approximately 150 people delivering environmental social impact assessments and soil and groundwater work across energy, food and water sectors. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Then we have Laura E. Williamson, Director of the Membership of Institutional Partnerships, REN21. Laura, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello everybody, lovely to be here. Yes, I work for REN21. We are a multi-stakeholder global network. What we do is we work to replace fossil fuels with renewables to really create a more inclusive society. So for us as a network of over 95 members across the world, it's really about building a fairer economy and world. And basically, in short, we believe in the transformative power of renewables. So very much coming from the aspect of renewables now. Thank you.
Fantastic. Finally, we're joined by Jacopo Pendesa, the project developer RP Global.
Thank you, Margaret, for the introduction. Yes, my name is Jacopo Pendezza. I'm a project developer for Tanzania for RP Global. RP Global is a private renewable energy developer, mostly active in Europe, but with a growing portfolio of project in West Africa and East Africa. As for myself, I am in charge to develop a number of large wind and large solar to be connected to the national grid of Tanzania.
Thank you very much, Jaco. Africa is responsible for only 3.3% of global carbon emissions, while there is a substantial investment in renewable energy. Why is this the case? Edward, can we ask you to comment first?
Okay, thank you, Margaret. I would like to respond as follows to the question. Really, as we understand, the impact of climate change has no limit, has no boundaries. No matter the contribution is minor or major, but what we need is collaboration in the global. Therefore, Africa as well has the responsibility to take measures. So Africa, we have to take action. Though we meet the challenges of technologies and the financing, but this is a global issue. We have no choice. We have to take part. And we are part of Paris Agreement of 1215. So we need to take action so that we can combat the gas emissions in this global. Second, Africa, a good example is Tanzania. We have privileged to have abundance of renewable energy resources. And so far we have a deficit of electricity. The access connections to our people are very low, and therefore we have to use the all resources we have, especially renewable energies, to get enough power for our people, for the economic development, and for the development of the whole country. In that matter, we need the energy mix. We need the diversification of power sources for power generation. We cannot rely on a single or two sources of power because those which have consequences, because we have experience before we depended almost 90% on hydro. But we got a problem when the climate change came, and then we had a crisis of power. So we don't want to repeat the mistakes. We need to have diversification of power. And since we have abundance of renewable resources, wind is abundant, solar, geothermal, tidal and waves, and now the hydrogen, we have abundance as well because the assessment has been done. So we need to use all kinds of power or of sources of power we have, including the gas. So far, we are. Also, let me finish by saying that almost 85% of energy consumption in Africa is dominated by biomass. So, which are product of forest. So to reduce the impact we have to use the alternative source, including renewable energies. This is biogas, biofuel, and so forth. So we need to take part as African continent to this crisis of gas emissions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Edward. And I think your highlight on diversification and the diversification that renewable energy bring is well noted in the energy mix. And I think that's very similar to where I'm coming from in Namibia. Lucy, as a scientist, do you want to add or comment for a quick 10 seconds on this?
Sure. Yeah, I think part of the reason that there's sort of reduced greenhouse gas emissions across the African continent is a lot of the electricity provided is from renewable resources, but also a huge proportion of the population still doesn't have access to electricity. So I think that, combined perhaps with less manufacturing than some other parts of the world, are some of the key reasons.
Can I just jump in with this? Just one little bit. I think, you know, what has both been said by Edward and Lucy is absolutely spot on. But I would also like to encourage that we need to look beyond the power sector, right? We have heating and cooling, and we have mobility. And I think this is really where, as Africa really develops and taps into its economic and innovative potential, we really need to be looking, and this sort of addresses this question about the investment versus the current carbon or greenhouse gas emission footprint, is that we also need to be looking at those heating sources for buildings and industry, as well as for mobility, all which is needed to really to create a vibrant, thriving, economically diverse society.
Fantastic. So if I can summarize, I think the one reason why Africa is keenly investing in renewable energy, even though the global footprint is so low, is firstly diversification. Secondly, the opportunity to actually bring industry to the energy source now. And if we start talking about green steel, green fertilizer, green and the secondly is to decarbonize existing industry currently seems to be commercially very competitive terms and in the future. Thank you very much. Jacopo, I'm going to come to you with the next question. According to the reports, 600 million of Africans are living without reliable source of energy. How is the public investing in renewable energy addressing this issue of energy poverty? And how are the investments sustainable? And what are some of the challenges? I'd like you to address this, and then Edward, I'd like you to follow up after Jaco has addressed the question.
Yes, well, I think that public investment in the renewable in Africa is it should be very much supported. Is one of the main driver for the the energy revolution in Africa. Beside that, we see also a space for private investor. I mean, private investor are keen to support the government in his mandate to provide electricity and energy in general to the population. So the private sector can have a say also not only in the production, but also in the distribution. We see some example in Africa of solar mini grid that can go together with the electrification of the country done by the government.
Edward, how do we address the issue of energy poverty in Tanzania?
The issue of energy poverty, yeah, so far we have the poverty in energy because still the installed capacity is not enough for the country, for the industry, and so forth. So we need to promote and to the different sources of power by involving the private sector. The government cannot do everything without the participation of private sector. So our policy, our energy policy of 2015 encourages the diversification of energy sources, but also encourages the participation of private sector, especially in renewable energy technologies. In renewable energy technologies, so far the country has not involved in the development of these projects in renewable energies, but mostly are participating the private sector and are participating directly through the small scale, and also in large scale. But so far we have much advanced in the small scale. That meaning the mini grids. We have only private sector in the mini grids, especially in the rural areas and the areas where the national grid will not reach soon. For example, in the islands, we have almost 200 islands in the Indian Ocean, the Lake Victoria, Lake Tanganyika, 200 islands. And these, we want to connect them with the power. And the power to connect with them is from renewable energies, especially solar, because it's difficult to extend the grid to all of these islands. So the participation of private sector is really great, and we are promoting that. Although the government also is supporting for Tanzania, and I think even other countries in Africa, they are doing the same. So the government also injects funds through the rural electrification agency to support the development of these mini grids in the areas where the national grid cannot reach. But Jacobo said well that we need to involve the private sector not only in generation but also in distribution, which we are doing in the small scale projects. But also we are looking so far the transmission line is dominated by the state company, but we are looking at the possibilities of involving the private sector from the generation, transmission, and the distribution.
Thank you very much, Edward.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry.
Yes.
I just want to add to this. I think when involving the private sector needs revenue certainty. And
Yeah.
when we've seen more and more a message going through to the multilaterals to address revenue certainty and taking the risk out of revenue certainty for the private sector. So I think we're all looking towards COP27 to see to what extent the multilaterals will actually come to the table to support revenue certainty in these far to reach islands that you're talking about. Thank you very much. Lucy, what do renewables in Africa look like? Are there any technologies that are coming through the pipeline that may have a greater share in the continent's energy mix going forward? What is your opinion?
Well, I think the potential is immense, as we've all touched on to a degree. I found something that was written by the International Renewable Energy Agency, which some might say they would say this, but it said greater than 10 terawatts of solar, 350 gigawatts of hydro, 10 gigawatts of wind, and more than 20 of geothermal was the potential across Africa. So there's huge, huge scope. I think diversification is key. So historically, hydropower, has been used quite extensively in some countries, and we're starting to see the difficulties with that with recent droughts. And I think in terms of potential new opportunities or emerging, of course, hydrogen, like it's emerging globally, the same, of course, is true in Africa. I guess one of the key things for me for Africa is like Laura mentioned earlier, that not just thinking about energy on its own, but also thinking about it in combination with agriculture, be that hydrogen with production of ammonia, or using solar to shade the ground and grow different crops. So I think, that's quite an important distinction, I suppose, for Africa.
Laura, it's all about connecting the dots, isn't it, between renewable energy, food security, water security. What are your experience in REN 21 about Africans' ability to connect the dots or the opportunities to connect the dots?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a sort of a confession, I think we've been really bad in the renewable energy sector about connecting those dots. We've been so focused on supply. How do we get the technologies? What are the technologies? How do we scale technologies? Where do they belong? And we really haven't focused on the demand side. And I think what the huge potential in Africa is, because there's such diversification, because you have different governance structures, geographies, access to different types of renewables, there really is a huge opportunity to better link to demand. So really looking at what is it that renewables can bring to the agriculture sector? What is it that renewables can bring to the health sector, to the education sector? So instead of pushing kilowatt hour, BTUs or electrons down pipelines, is really saying, what are we trying to accomplish and how can renewables support that? And given the huge diversity, given the fact that 54 countries, last count in Africa, all have access to renewables, it's there. And it's really about how do we connect those dots and how do we make sure that we have that nuanced conversation about what renewable and energy efficiency applications are going to be able to meet the need that is put on the table.
What would you advise local governments, businesses, and citizens to actually create and drive that demand to utilize renewables?
To me, you're asking me, yeah? Yeah, I think it's sort of like a sandwich, right? I mean, governments are really important for setting policy and targets so they set the right regulatory framework. From the community or the user level, it's really about being able to manifest what is it that we want to do? What is it that we're trying to accomplish? It's not about owning a PV panel on the roof of our house. It's about being able to cool, to cook, to use my phone, to run my business. And so the energy transition is not only about changing the fuel, but it's also about changing societal acceptance, communities accepting it. It's about the socio-political acceptance. It's about market acceptance. And I think by creating that sandwich between the regulatory framework that governments are able to set and the demand that is being pushed by the users, by communities, by businesses, we provide those correct market signals that help for financing, to help secure the financing, to really create that solid demand base that then allows that investment to happen.
Fantastic. I couldn't agree more. Jaco, I would like to come to you. The continent is industrializing and developing very rapidly. To what extent does you as a private developer or a developer experience African governments encouraging local industries to ensure they use energy without disrupting the country's economic development and progress?
Yeah, industrialization especially I'm talking about Tanzania because it's the example that I know better. I mean, industrialization is a thing now. I mean, it's for sure the direction where the country is going, and the government is very supportive for this. I think industrialization can match with the use of renewable. I mean, the availability of energy is a prerequisite of the industrialization, because without energy everything is more difficult to be implemented. So but again, another issue is that without industrialization, the demand in general of a country can be low. So these two things should go in parallel, and because each of them can contribute to the development of the other one. So it's very important that the government make a framework that can allow to create new industries, and also to develop new renewable power. Of course, renewable in general, solar and wind are intermittent powers. So this is a technical issue that can be taken into consideration when we inject electricity in the grid. The grid should be make profit of this electricity and provide electricity at the right time to the industry, and this is, of course, is something that there is a huge potential of improvement in the grid of African countries.
Edward, I want to come to you. What exactly is Tanzania doing to incentivize not only the development of the demand, as Laura has indicated, but also incentivize the demand being driven or sourced or supplied by renewable electricity? And as a regulator, to what extent does Tanzania contribute to create an enabling environment? Edward? Okay, I think, Edward, I think you're frozen.
Can I, while we're waiting for
Alexa?
Edward, could I
Yes.
just make just a thing? I mean, I think what Jacopo was saying was, very valid. I think also too, what we're hearing across Africa, because industry associations are part of our membership, is the fact that the incentive for them is the fact that it's renewables bring reliable, cost-effective, quality, in this case power, but also sometimes for heat and for motorizing engines, but also the issue of corruption. I know that we don't like talking about that, but the fact that with renewables, whether you have them for your own use, that you are linking yourself directly to that energy source, and that provides a big stability for business. We're talking about sort of manufacturing or for lighting and heating, but also the fact that from a cost perspective, they're able to actually cost out. They know how much it's going to cost. It may be a lot for the primary installation, the first installation, but there's not this unanticipated fluctuation of prices with the import or the buying of fuels, of fossil fuels. So that, I think, is also another way that is sort of not often talked about, but is really another key motivation for business and industry on the continent and elsewhere, not just Africa.
Thank you, Laura. Edward, are you back? Okay. Can I? You're unmuted? Can you just shout out to me, Edward? Can you hear me?
Margaret, his microphone doesn't seem to be on at the minute in the box.
Okay, well, we're going to come back. Edward, the moment your microphone is on, we're going to come back to you, because I would like to hear from the Tanzanian experience, what are the incentives and what are the mechanisms being put in place to not only talk about renewable energy, not only talk about demand for renewable energy, but actually incentivize industry to move towards it. So the moment your mic is on, we can kind of come back to you on this. I'd like to go to Jaco and on something that Laura has said. We find renewable energy and when you talk about sun and wind, which is predominant, very intermittent. So on the one side, you have these opportunities where at commercially prices, renewable is penetrating and become a source of preferred source of supply. On the other side, you struggle with intermittency. To what experience, what is being done to address intermittency and the technical issues related to it? Thank you, Edward. We could have come back to you just now.
Yeah, for the time being,
I'm so sorry.
Okay, Edward, we're going to come back to you just now. We're just going to finish with Jaco answering the question, and then I'm going to come back to you. I'm glad your microphone is working again.
Okay.
Yes, Jaco.
Yeah, I mean, regarding the situation in Tanzania, I mean, the penetration of intermittent renewable is so low that for the time being they just, I mean, the grid regulator put a limit in the percentage of the capacity of the renewable that can be connected to the grid. Meanwhile, I think the grid can be, let's say, updated. Also taking some example for more advanced grid like in Europe or in North America to accommodate this intermittent renewables. Of course, something that there is a interesting conversation is related to the integration of batteries, of large batteries in the system. I mean, of course, for the mini grid, for example, solar mini grid, there are battery in the mini grid to avoid this. I mean, to have availability of electricity also during the night or during the early morning, for example. And this can also be thought to be integrated in the grid. But of course, we have to be quite careful regarding the cost and the technical implementation of these things. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I absolutely concur with you. If we really talk about utilizing renewable as a quality source of supply for new demands, we will need to address the storage and the intermittency issue. So I'll see in the next couple of years a number of storage and related storage in technology being penetrating to much larger extent the grid, and not just the ones off here and batteries. It would be interesting to see how the private sector will participate in putting storage solutions to the table, and how they will be rewarded for having not necessarily supply of electricity, but the availability of electricity to fill up those intermittent periods and provide the necessary ancillary services to provide a quality of supply to end users in the end. Edward, I'm going to come back to you. I think your mic is now still working, and I'm so glad we have you back here. The one thing that we'd like to ask you is, we're coming back to the question about creating or incentivizing or encouraging industry in country to create or implement industry that can actually drive the demand for renewable energy. And the question I have to you as the regulator in Tanzania, to what extent is this already incentivized? Are there any specific mechanisms that incentivize or regulate the utilization of renewable energy, or is this still very much voluntary?
Yes, in Tanzania we have a regulator. This is Energy and Water Utilities Regulatory Authority. They regulate all those three sectors, from water, energy, petrol, and the gas, but also renewable energy. They regulate renewable energy from the small scale to the large scale. They provide licenses for small scale, that is from 1 megawatt to 10 megawatts.
Okay. We would like to hear from Tanzania.
From 1 megawatt and below, they don't need a license.
Okay, so you're and I think it's very similar in Namibia. Sorry. So I'm just saying, I'm stressing it. I think it's very similar in Namibia and in the rest of the continent, where the burden for licensing is reduced for smaller installations, rooftop and smaller installations. Thank you very much. We do have a question from our panelists, and I would like to give it to the team. One of our panelists says, I study integrated management of natural resources. And this question is based on the need for integration of an ecosystem or ecosystem services in our studies. Are the ecosystems included in the studies related to the diversification of energy sources in Africa? Lucy, can I put you on the spot here?
You can put me on the spot. If by ecosystem services we're meaning around sort of natural capital accounting, I think it is in some instances, but not all. We certainly do environmental social impact assessments before the bigger projects that need them to evaluate the impact on the environment and the people in the vicinity of the project. And of course, check during the construction that those measures are adhered to. I don't know if anyone else can add anything further. Laura's waving.
Laura. Yes, Laura, please go ahead.
I think it raises, this is sort of a little bit broader than the specific question, but I think the ecosystem services is a really important one in the sense that we also have to be, again, speaking from the renewable energy sector, very aware of the discussion around the sustainability of renewables. And, that there will be effects and there will be impacts, but what are they? How do we mitigate against them? How do we balance them out against other considerations, particularly when it comes to the manufacturing of renewable energy equipment, the siting of it on indigenous lands, ecologically sensitive lands? How do we put in place these renewable energy systems that are also respectful of not only the natural environment, the ecosystems, but also the social systems that are also in place. And this is really, sort of starting to grow, and again, moves beyond this initial discussion of the technology, get the technology right, and really what is the larger environment in which that technology is situated, and how are we actually using those resources? So very important questions that we all need to really be aware of when we're talking about renewables. Renewables, unfortunately, are not the magic bullet. They are a very good bullet. They come with their issues as well, and we need to face that, and we need to be honest and inclusive in those discussions.
Okay.
Going forward, I think it's how we use the minerals. Oh, sorry, Margaret.
Fantastic. Fantastic. We're going to have time for one more question, and I'd like to pose this question to Jaco and Edward. Africa is one of the youngest populations in the world, regionally speaking. What opportunities are there for skills development and training in renewable energy to ensure that a continent's energy is self-dependent? Shall we go to Jaco first, and then Edward, if you close off with your comments and add to it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the topic of the population in Africa is a huge topic, because it's not only related to energy, to renewable, but to another big number of issues. The fact that there are a lot of young people, and it's a potential good things for the renewable, which is a quite in general is a quite new technology. I mean, now it's not so new, but it can really match with providing labor and possibility of employment to a large number of population. And this is also very important for the self-sufficiency for one particular country, because the maintenance of project and also how to use renewable energy cannot be relied on foreign investor or foreign institution, but it's something that can come from the population. The fact that it is young, the population, is also good, because can bring a lot of new ideas that can be very much original.
Thank you, Jaco. Edward, I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to respond and to add your thoughts on how we can get our youth employed in the renewable sector.
Okay, thank you very much. The domestication of technology is an impetus in promotion of any technology. This results in creation of sense of ownership, skills, development, and reduction. So realizing the importance of local content in the energy sector development, the governments of Africa should put more emphasis on research and development. Renewable energy is one of the priority science courses in our high learning institution, for example, in Tanzania, and the technical colleges. And we have established the Center of Excellence specifically for renewable energy technologies in a number of universities and technical colleges. But also these regions in Africa, different regions have established the centers, like in SADC. We have a SADC Center for Renewable Energy and the Energy Efficiency. In East Africa, we have East Africa Center of Excellence for Renewable Energy and the Energy Efficiency. The same in West Africa, ECOWAS, in Central Africa. So these centers are providing training, courses, skills development, exchange experience, as well as fund mobilization. So I think through these centers, and so thank you very much. So.
Thank you very much. And I just want to conclude on my personal experience in this. So I firmly believe the ecosystem around renewable energy is not just related to the direct job creation or the direct employment in renewable energy, but the indirect and the induced. And I think that is where lies quite a big opportunity. I just had a discussion yesterday. I presented to a group of students at school level, green hydrogen. And the question they asked me is, what are my career opportunities? And again, we played as I said, tell me what you want to do and I'll tell you how you can get involved and how you can actually purpose yourself to be part of the renewable sector. Thank you for our fantastic panel, for an audience and for joining us today. We really appreciate that you have taken the time out to take part of the discussion. Don't forget, we have 3 more sessions planned for today, so check them out and register on the RSK's website. You can tune into the recording of our session later on the RSK's website, and please share on social media using the hashtag #ActOnESG. And remember, on Instagram, you can go at the RSK Group, on LinkedIn, RSK Group, on Facebook, RSK Group, one word, and please give your opinion on Twitter at RSK Group. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Margaret.
Thank you.